with you guys. If you've got any questions, stop me along the way. Or if you had any issues, happy to address them. But just a little refresher. Balloon pump, it's a catheter, sits in your descending aorta, inflates during diastole, pushes blood to the coronary arteries and extremities, and then rapidly deflates during systole. Causes a suction event in the LV and helps to offload that LV. So balloon pump therapy, it's been around for 50 years, nothing new, but timed on the cardiac cycle, volume displacement pump at its core, just a cheap, relatively quick, efficient way to give a patient cardiac support. These catheters are about $1,000. So that being said, there's two primary triggers. So first trigger is going to be your ECG if we're able to get leads on the patient. Balloon pump, when you hit start, puts it in the auto mode, and in the auto mode, it's going to look for that ECG. It's going to set up its timing based on those R waves. It's going to look for the R waves and set up its timing based on the R waves. If for some reason you're not able to get leads on the patient, it will go to its secondary trigger, which is the arterial pressure waveform. And there's two ways to get the arterial pressure waveform. Newest way is with our fiber optic balloons, which you guys are primarily using. We had some supply chain issues back during the pandemic, and so some of these fiber optic balloons were not readily available, so we had to go back to the standard balloons. Hopefully you'll just see the fiber optic moving forward. We're in a much better situation supply-wise now. The benefit of the fiber optic is it's got a little sensor in the tip, shoots a light beam out, and then it registers that via the little transducer at the tip of the catheter. So it's quicker to therapy, it's more accurate, you don't have to zero it. Those are all the benefits. If you were going to use one of our traditional catheters, the difference is, this is before we had that fiber optic technology, there would be no sensor, the balloon is exactly the same, you don't have this orange cord, and you would get your arterial pressure waveform from your pressure bag, so the inner lumen of your pressure bag. Even with our fiber optic balloons, we're still going to hook up a pressure bag to it. It's just going to be a backup source in case something happened to that fiber optic sensor at the tip. So we get, if something were to happen here, like this fiber optic cable were to break, you get a fiber optic sensor alarm, you would simply unplug it, and then you'd have to zero out your standard pressure bag. So it keeps the line patent, and it's just a backup source. If you were using a non-fiber optic balloon, again, that would be your primary source to get your arterial pressure waveform. So balloon pump, when you hit start, is going to look for the EKG. It's going to try to then base timing on the R waves. If for some reason you don't have the time to get leads on, it'll switch to that arterial pressure waveform, and it looks for the upstroke of systole on the arterial pressure waveform. Two ways to get it there. The balloon pump prefers the ECG signal because the electrical signal comes before the mechanical signal of that upstroke of systole. It just gives it more time to set up its timing. So once you're able to get leads on, the balloon pump will switch over to that EKG trigger. Totally safe to run the patient in either one. You could run a patient in pressure trigger the whole run. Again, the balloon pump just prefers the EKG because it just gives it more time to set up its timing. So those are the two primary triggers. There's three sizes of catheters. There's a 30, 40, and 50. I think you guys are just stocking the 40 and 50, is that right? Or you guys have all three? No. 40 and 50, yeah. So you just want to make sure you grab the right one off the shelf when you're going to put these in. So a 30 would be for a patient under 5 feet. 40 is for a patient 5 foot to 5'4". Everybody 5'4" and above gets a 50. So that's kind of an easy way to figure that out. Let's see, other things. As far as management of the catheter, these tend to go in fairly quick. We can go over the insertion part of it afterwards. Why don't we just do a little around the world on the pump to start here? So this is our Cardiosave balloon pump. It's the newest version that we have. What's nice about this pump is it does break down for transport. So that's a good thing. Also adds a few more complexities to the pump. So we'll kind of go over some of those. Balloon pump uses helium, so it's a light gas. It's able to shuttle it back and forth fairly quickly. There is a helium tank located on the side of the pump. You just want to monitor that. Typically these will last a couple years, especially at a lower volume center like you guys. So just if you want to, when you're going to grab a balloon pump, if you just want to do a quick check and see how much helium you have, there's an external gauge right here. Looks like there's about a quarter of a tank left. So that's where your helium gauge is. This is a battery light indicator. So these, this light is currently charging. It's telling me that my batteries are in the process of charging. We always want to keep our balloon pump plugged in, obviously, when it's on a patient, but especially when it's in storage as well. That's how we keep those batteries charged. If you see it blinking here, it tells you that one of your batteries is in the process of charging. So we'll take a look at those on the back in a second. Nice little Doppler in here for the ICU. Storage bin located right here. I always kind of point that out. A lot of times you'll find your extra pressure cables, printer paper, things like that in there. If you flip this guy around, this is where we're gonna have all of our connections. So we have got, looks like you guys have got your EKG cables here, pressure bag setup should go right here. The red cable was in the storage bin that goes in here. You've got the ability to interface with your Philips monitor. That's where these plugins would be right here. Power button, I always like to point that out because it's kind of hidden. It's right there, that green button right there, kind of behind the bar. That's where our power button is. Printer is located right here if you ever have to change the printer paper. Toilet paper side down. We get a lot of calls because people just load that thermal paper backwards and it won't print. Let's see, batteries. So these are your 2 lithium ion batteries. You can see, again, I just hit this button right here. If you want to check the status of your batteries, this one's fully charged. There's 5 lights. Each light roughly represents 20%. This one's fully charged. This one is almost charged. So it's in the process of charging right now. These are supposed to be changed out every 2 or 3 years by your service team. I kind of use the analogy, it's kind of like your cell phone battery. They're great when they're new. As they get older and get cycled through, you know, they don't hold a charge as well. So if for some reason one of these batteries doesn't get exchanged or doesn't get, gets old and isn't holding a charge, these do pop out. So what's nice about this machine is it will tell you which battery it's, when we're unplugged, it'll tell you which battery it's using. It'll use all of the battery capacity in one battery, and then it will switch over to the other one. So if you ever had to do a long transport, or if you had a battery that wasn't holding a charge, these are hot swappable, so you could pop one out and steal one from another unit. They're 90 minutes each, so 3 hours total to get a patient, you know, wherever you're gonna move them if you're on battery power. So just a good thing to kind of keep in mind. You can always pop another battery out of a unit. Unfortunately, you guys don't have extras, but if you're doing a long transport to Bend or, I don't know, somewhere that's gonna be a long ambulance ride, you probably wouldn't want to send them with an extra battery or 2. I think you guys actually have the plug, don't you? Or did you?
I think that Biomed was working on that. I don't
Okay,
think
or actually have one, yeah. We do make a transport battery that is, it's like a battery casing like this, but it has a plug-in so that they can plug into the unit if they do transport. So it's kind of nice if you're a hospital that transports a lot and you're transporting to long areas and you want to have the ability to plug in. So yeah, that's kind of the ins and outs. There's 2 connections here. So get our catheter, hook it up. 2 things that are going to be handed off by the scrub to the circulator. With your fiber optic, you've got your helium line or your gas line right here. So that's going to go right through this little target. Plugs in like so.
That thing you just wipe it on your pants and
5 second rule.
Yeah, you're good to go. And then you've got your fiber optic cable. So your fiber optic cable is going to go into this little door. It kind of slides over, and it's red triangle to red triangle. So red triangle up, and this one, it has a little down degree tilt too. So plug that one in there, and those are the 2 things that we're going to hand off. I'm going to plug in my simulator here so we can run through a few scenarios.
What's that blue port? Is that just for the simulator?
Yeah, so this is just for the simulator, exactly. So you'll have your EKG and then you'll have your pressure bag plugged in right there. To start this guy up, we're gonna hit the start button. When you hit start, it takes about 30 seconds to initialize therapy. So it's going to zero out the catheter. It's gonna size the balloon catheter so it knows how much helium to shuttle back and forth. And it's gonna do a timing check. So just be aware when you start this guy up,
That
does
whole
take-
process takes.
yeah, it takes roughly 30 seconds. So you're gonna see the waveform ramping up. It's gonna tell you it's autofilling and calibrating. But obviously if the patient's crashing, you're trying to get them on support, it can be kind of a stressful situation where until this thing gets going. It's gonna inflate 8 times, it's gonna stop, do another timing check, and then in a second here, it's gonna give us our numbers and we'll be on support. There we go. So if we're just going down the screen here, we've got our trigger. It's telling us right now that we're in the ECG trigger. We've got a good signal, right? Heart rate's 80. We've got our assisted systolic and diastolic numbers. We've got our map. We've got what we call our diastolic augmentation pressure. That is the pressure of this balloon inflating. So that's an inflation pressure. We're always looking to have a diastolic augmentation pressure that's higher than our systolic number. That's telling us that we're helping to perfuse those coronaries. So even if it's just a few points, that's good for the patient. We're helping to offset that blood and get it to the coronaries. Balloon pump will set what's called an augmentation alarm 2 minutes into the case. So it's going to learn this patient's rate and rhythm, and then it will set this augmentation alarm roughly 10 below whatever their diastolic augmentation number is. So it'll, in a second here, probably set this at about 104. This is really not an alarm for the cath lab. It's more an alarm for the ICU. If the patient's heart rate changes, our diastolic augmentation will, crash. It will trip that alarm, and it's basically just telling them, hey, my heart rate's changed, come check on me. It's a come check on me alarm for the ICU. For you guys, it's kind of a nuisance alarm, so we'll show you how to clear that or manage that if you need to. Again, you've got your batteries right here, so it's going to be your battery light indicator. It's telling us what's going on with our batteries. Battery number 2 is full, battery number 1 is almost full, and we always want to see this AC adapter plugged in. That's telling us that we're charging our batteries, and then we also have our helium gauge here. I'm going to unplug this real quick just to show you what it's going to look like if we're not plugged in. So now it's going to draw off battery number 1. It will again take all of battery bay number 1, and then it will switch over to battery number 2 if we're on battery status. How long do we have on those? You get
90 minutes
each.
Per battery.
Per battery, so it's about 3 hours total. And that's at a rate of 90 beats per minute. So if you've got a patient that's at 120, I think it's two hours and 15 minutes. So yeah,
That makes sense.
Using more juice.
using more juice, heart rate's going faster. So the menu itself, let's just go down here again. So any questions so far? Buzzing through this guy. Yeah, no. So we've got our assisted systolic and diastolic numbers, right? Just be aware those numbers are going to be different than what you have on your monitors in your room typically. That's because the monitors in the room, the Philips monitors, don't know the patient has a balloon catheter in. So the Philips monitor is looking for the highest peak on this waveform, and the highest peak on this waveform is this diastolic augmentation, or this inflation pressure. So the balloon is inflating at the sharp V. Balloon inflates, and that's our diastolic augmentation pressure. Philips monitor doesn't know that. It's looking for the highest peak on the waveform, so a lot of times the Philips monitor is going to call this number the systolic number in your room. So just be aware of that. If there's ever any discrepancies on what's on the screen and what's on the balloon pump, these are the most accurate numbers. Titrate your drips, everything off of this machine. As far as waveforms, for this arterial pressure waveform, we're looking for kind of this sharp V. We want to see this sharp V going across the balloon. I'm going to freeze the display. The balloon, again, is inflating right here at this sharp V. So the aortic valve is going to close, and that's when the balloon inflates. In the ICU, I'm going to open the menu. Here's your touchscreen. You can open all these menus individually, or you can open them all just by hitting that. one button. I kind of like, when I'm managing it, to have it all open so I can see everything that's going on. And I don't mean to jump around here, but we're in 1-to-1 right now, just going over that waveform. When I put the patient into 1-to-2, if I were to freeze this display, we've got their native arterial pressure, and then we've got this. So every other beat right here is getting support. Every other beat's getting a balloon. We've got an unassisted beat, assisted beat, unassisted beat, assisted. So on that unassisted arterial pressure waveform, the dicrotic notch is where that aortic valve is closing, and that's where we want this balloon inflating. So in the ICU, they'll do a timing check every so often, and they'll throw a reference line up like this, and they're gonna look for the dicrotic notch of the native arterial pressure waveform. I've gotta lower it down. Dicrotic notch is right here, and they'll push this reference line over, and that's where they wanna make sure that that balloon's inflating. So it looks good, we're timing correctly. These pumps are very good at timing. You don't have to adjust them very much, but it's always good to do a timing check every once in a while and just make sure that we're timing correctly. So again, primary trigger, I'm gonna put it back into 1-to-1. Primary trigger is our ECG tracing. If for some reason we lose our ECG, patient's thrashing around, lead pops off, balloon pump's gonna look for an R wave, didn't see an R wave there for a couple beats, and it automatically switched over to the pressure trigger. So the balloon pump does that automatically. It's just a safety feature that's built in. Again, now we're running in what we call our pressure trigger. Totally safe to run the patient in there. We've lost our EKG lead. Now it's looking for the upstroke of systole on the arterial pressure waveform. Once we're able to get the leads back on the patient, so right now it's red and it's telling me we're in the pressure trigger. It wants to make sure it's got a good reliable R wave here. And then once it says, okay, I trust that we have a good reliable R wave, it'll switch back over to that ECG. This will turn green. There we go. So now we're back in that ECG trigger. When you hit start, it puts you into the auto mode, and it's gonna go between these two triggers based on whichever signal's the best. We do have some added triggers here. As a safety feature, you would have to come over to what we call the semi-automatic mode to get into those. So semi-automatic mode is gonna open me up to a few pacemaker triggers. So we've got some pacemaker triggers. If you wanna set the patient to time off a pacemaker spike, you can do that. There's a couple pacemaker triggers to do that. There's also what we call an internal trigger, not timed on any cardiac cycle, but these are typically used in bypass. If you want to give the patient pulsatile flow, have this inflating in the background, not timing on any cardiac cycle, you can put it in the internal trigger and set it anywhere from 60 to 120, and it's just going in the background. Sometimes ECMO patients, they'll do that with as well. But as a safety feature for the cath lab, you guys are gonna live primarily almost in the auto mode for the most of the time, and it's just gonna be those two primary triggers. I'm just kind of showing you what those other ones are. Frequency, balloon pump always starts in 1-to-1, so every heartbeat's getting a balloon. Again, when we're weaning a patient, or if we wanted to do a timing check, we could pop them into 1-to-2 or 1-to-3, right? So that's how we would do that. Augmentation is another way to wean. Max augmentation, this balloon is always inflating at 100%. But another way to wean the patient would be to inflate this at like 90 or 80%. So there's 10 bars here, each bar represents 10%. You could knock this down to 90 or 80 or 70%. That's what that augmentation is all about. And then you do have the ability in the auto mode to tinker a little bit with the deflation timing if you wanted to do that, and that's where you would manage those. Augmentation alarm. So we were talking about that a little bit earlier. This patient has a diastolic augmentation of 114. That augmentation alarm has now set itself at 104, so roughly 10 below. If this patient's heart rate were to change, so let's say that this guy's heart rate bounces up to 130, watch what happens to our augmentation. We don't have as much filling time, we're not able to augment as well, so that's gonna crash. We're now gonna fall below what that augmentation alarm was originally set at, so it's gonna trip the alarm. Whenever you get an alarm, first thing I recommend doing is going to pause audio to get rid of that annoying alarm. It's terrible. Pause audio is gonna get rid of the alarm for 60 seconds unless you fix it. So every 60 seconds, it's gonna go off until you fix it. The other thing I recommend is I wish this help screen would just automatically pop up, but if you go to the help screen, it will walk you through whatever the issue is with the alarm. So in this case, it's gonna tell me that my augmentation alarm is set too high. It's at 104, we're currently augmenting at 97. We've fallen below, we've tripped it, right? So there's an I didn't fix it in time. That augmentation alarm, I'm gonna lower it so we're roughly 10 below what we're currently augmenting. So I'm just gonna knock it down to like 86. We're roughly 10 below and I've cleared that alarm. Some cath labs will come in here before the case and just turn this thing off. So you can turn it off as well. Augmentation alarm's off. And then when you're getting ready to deliver to the patient to the ICU, if you just arrow up one time, it will automatically set it to 10 below. So that's another thing you can do. Unfortunately, when this patient's heart rate settles back in, so let's say we're back at 114, the augmentation alarm doesn't reset itself. So you're gonna have to come back in here and you're probably gonna wanna come back and set this to a roughly 104 once their heart rate settles back in. So just be aware of that. It's kind of something you're gonna have to manage. Pretty common alarm that can go off in the cath lab if the patient's heart rate's changing. Other alarms that you're gonna see, disconnect. Didn't really talk. We've got two of these quick connects on here. So these can come undone fairly easy. They're just pressure locks. They're designed if it catches on a wheel or a bed rail to just pop out real quickly. So just be aware they can come undone fairly easy. It'll stop the pump. You're gonna have to reconnect it and hit start when that happens.
And wait.
And wait, yeah, it takes, again, this can do that whole startup again because we've lost some helium. It's gotta flush the rest of it and start it up again. Another one you might see is if you get like a kink in your helium line, watch what happens to our waveform here. So we'll kind of kink this guy off. It's gonna be rounded off. Got a kink in my waveform. It's gonna stop. Pause audio, help screen. It's gonna tell me, hey, you've got a kink in your waveform or in your helium line. I'd go back, trace it, clear it. And then whenever you get a red alarm, you've got to come back in and restart the pump. So I'll restart it and then we're rocking and rolling again. Some of the kind of common alarms you'll see, let's see. Any kind of gas loss, gas gain, so we'll see if we can kind of replicate that. Any gas loss, gas gain alarms. Gas loss in the circuit alarm should kind of trigger your brain that possibly the balloon catheter is ruptured. So if I come in here, go to my help screen, first thing it's gonna tell me to do is check my helium line for blood back. If I see any blood in here, that's an indication that my balloon catheter is ruptured. Inflating and deflating, we've sucked some blood back in, and the balloon catheter is gonna need to be removed. So it's gonna start a 30-minute timer, and then it's recommended the balloon catheter is removed within 30 minutes so it doesn't clot off. So first thing we're gonna ask you to do is clamp it right here at the white fitting, disconnect right here, and then obviously get prepared to remove that catheter. Doesn't happen very often at the time of placement, but if these catheters are in for a while, they're inflating and deflating against a calcified aorta, these catheters can wear down, and that can happen. Yeah.
So why would I clamp it there? Why wouldn't I just unplug it?
Yeah, so this is a kind of a newer thing that we're asking people to do. The problem that we've had is that newer nurses don't realize that they've got a ruptured balloon and they continue to hit start. And so when you hit start, the balloon's gonna try to start up again, and you're inflating and deflating and you're sucking blood in, and they're not checking their helium line, noticing that there's blood back in here, and they just keep, what we've had happen is they've sucked blood all the way back to the machine to the point where blood's gotten in the machine. So that's kind of the new protocol. Clamp it, disconnect it, obviously check it.
So you said once you notice the blood, and so you've obviously have a ruptured balloon.
Right.
You clamp it, you have 30 minutes to get that out.
That's what, yeah, that's
What
what's
if you're on a
recommended.
90-minute transport?
Yeah, so, well, then we're looking to get to the closest facility
Okay.
to get it out, or, yeah. And so if you're on a transport, the hard part about that is if you're on a transport, once you notice that you've got potentially a ruptured balloon, we're gonna ask you to kind of monitor whatever that time is so that you can let them know when you arrive to whatever facility. Obviously, you're gonna wanna get to the closest facility that you can. They're gonna have to make a decision, do we, you know, well, I guess if it's a ruptured balloon, you're gonna have to pull it anyways. Yeah. I was thinking of a catastrophic failure, but if you're on a, not to complicate things, but yeah, if you were on a transport with this machine and for some reason you had a catastrophic failure and the machine shut down, then we're gonna ask you to kind of time that as you are on your way to the next facility, because they're gonna have to make a decision then to either pull that catheter out or continue therapy, and it's gonna be kind of based on how long it's been in there, so.
Is there any, like, I guess, so if you have a ruptured balloon, what's the likelihood that you'll be able to remove that and leave your sheath in place?
No.
Yeah, so that's not recommended.
Yeah, right. It's because
Right.
of shear.
Because of shear, yeah, so exactly. So what we'll ask you to do is when you're removing it, pull back till you get tension where that catheter is at the, till you feel that catheter come back to the sheath, and then pull them both out as one unit.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's not recommended that you leave a sheath in because obviously this thing has been inflating and deflating. And when you pull this thing back, you could shear it off when you get back to the sheath.
Sure.
If that makes sense. So that's why we pull it back till you get tension and then pull them both back out as one unit. Other things. Preferences. You can come in here. There's kind of some fun things. If you want to set up like a timed print, you can do that. So you can print strips every 15 minutes to whatever interval you want to, all the way up to 4 hours. So some centers ask you to print strips every hour. You can set that up beforehand, so it just will kick out a strip every hour on a time print for you. Let's see. Arrhythmias, this thing's got all kinds of algorithms built in, so it'll chase rates and rhythms up to about 200 beats per minute. Once you get above 130, you're not going to really give the patient a whole lot of support, but if you have a patient that goes into a rhythm like this, so this patient went into AFib, balloon pump will recognize that. It's got algorithms built into it. It's going to go into what we call the auto R wave deflate algorithm. Now, because those R waves aren't regular, we're not able to base our timing on it. As soon as it sees an R wave, it's just going to rapidly deflate the balloon. So you don't need to do anything. You don't need to put it into pressure trigger or 1 to 2 or anything like that. Balloon pump's going to recognize that. Same with couplets, VTAC, PVCs, all of those things. The balloon pump will recognize it. Obviously, you want to treat the rhythm, but it will continue to augment those rhythms. This one, so you start your chest compressions. Once you start those chest compressions, the balloon pump should recognize that as a pressure trigger and augment those chest compressions. So just be aware of that. You don't need to do anything to the balloon pump. It's going to alarm at you because our augmentation alarm is going to fall here and all those things. But
Isn't there a CPR light though? Is the CPR node
no.
Okay.
So it'll just recognize those. You're doing your chest compressions, and it will recognize that should recognize that as a pressure trigger and augment your chest compression. So yeah, nothing you need to do the pump. I mean, you could, if you want to force the machine into it, take a lead off or pull the EKG cable. That's going to automatically put it into the pressure trigger, but it should recognize those chest compressions as a pressure trigger. You don't have a EKG signal anymore, so it's going to time off for that, those chest compressions. Pacemaker, let's see here. Patient with pacemaker, we have all these extra pacemaker settings. You don't need to get into them. As long as you've got a good R wave, just let it go in the ECG mode. Totally fine in that ECG mode, right? So if you don't have an R wave, if you've got a pacemaker and you don't have an R wave, you've got a pacemaker problem, right? So pacemaker patients, as long as you got an R wave, just let it go in the ECG mode. Totally fine. Let's see, other things. So let's talk about the helium tank. So the helium tank is located on the side of the machine here. So you've got your little helium icon here. There's a magnetic connection there. This door pops out. This tray slides out. Don't have to stop therapy to change a helium tank or break this down to transport if you've got a patient on therapy. So there's a couple days of helium left in here. Once you get a low helium alarm on here, you've got what we call 24 autofill. So you got a couple days worth of helium in the machine once you get that low helium alarm. And that's because we've got this little transport mode that has a little reservoir in it with extra, or it contains that extra helium in it. So a couple of extra days worth of helium once you get an alarm. To change a tank, I'm gonna turn, because we have about a quarter of a tank, I'm gonna turn this tank off so we don't lose it. It's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And then there's a connection pin here that connects the tank to the unit. It's gonna hiss at you, so it's a little scary if you've never done this. This is a good thing to do with a partner, just so that somebody can verify the icon there. I just wanna make sure I've got it all the way turned on. Hiss at you a little bit there. You would slide out your tank. The new tank, these are refillable, so keep those, give them to your biomed guys. The new tank's gonna come with a little plastic strip and it's got a rubber O-ring. So you actually have a spindle here with extras, and then there's a little seal, a little rubber O-ring that needs to be changed. So the new one will come with a little rubber O-ring on top here. You pop that plastic band, grab your new rubber O-ring, you slide it in here. This is just a seal. Goes in like so. And then you gotta line up, there's two little dots here. You've gotta line up when you take your new tank, slide it back in, lock it in there, lock it down, and then you
And how
just,
much helium do you have in the machine when you take the tank off to
it's 24, what we call 24 autofills. So
24?
yeah, so every 2 hours, this balloon catheter will flush the line and refill it. So like your helium birthday balloons, the next day helium dissipates. Before it dissipates, it flushes it.
So you shouldn't dilly-dally too long, like playing
Yeah,
with it.
yeah. I mean, I guess the point is, when you get a low helium alarm, you don't have to change it. Like, it's not like you're going to run out within an hour. You've got a couple days to kind of figure
No,
it
I'm
out.
just wondering when you have
Oh.
the tank disconnected, like how much,
Yeah,
how long has it been?
24
auto-
24 autofills.
24 autofills,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. And then when you put your new tank on, you just got to remember to open it up, right? Sometimes people forget to open it up, so I got to open that tank up. It should register after a few turns here. There we go. And then we've got our tank all locked in. This little key goes up here. I always joke that it's always 2 in the morning and nobody's around when you have to change one of these, so it's good to kind of know where those are. I think your biomed guys have the extra tanks. I don't know if you guys keep them in the cath lab too, or yeah. So that's good to know, just to have on hand in case you need to change
They're
one
in our
of those.
locked storeroom, aren't they?
Yep,
Okay.
the changing room all the way to the left.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, they're in the changing room, they're not in the,
Well, it's
It's, you know, when you go, we have 3 changing rooms,
Right.
one all the way to the left.
oh, I thought it was in the, I thought,
That's where the helium is. If you're thinking about the raincoat's in the middle.
show me later.
Yeah.
A little rack in there.
I thought there was a rack of those in the locked supply room by the bathroom. I thought that's where we kept the helium tanks.
Years ago.
Years ago, probably the last time I changed one.
And then this is what we call our hybrid configuration. So this is the hospital configuration. You guys are gonna live in this 100% of the time when you're in the hospital. If you're transporting a patient to Southwest and you wanna break this down to a smaller footprint, you theoretically could take this on the ambulance if they'll let you, right? This is totally fine to take on the ambulance. What's nice about that, if you can get it in there, is you've got your power cord. So, but it is a big unit to do that. So, so this does break down to a smaller transport unit. To do that, there's a little unlock handle underneath here. So this is gonna unlock. It's gonna let you know that we've unlocked it, and it's gonna tell you that we're in the rescue mode. That's our transport mode. This is gonna pop out and slide out. Ooh, we got all kinds of extra cables here. So just wanna make sure you watch your helium line. I've got my simulator, so a little bit more than you normally have. This little guy is gonna pop out. It's 53 pounds. And then I'm gonna take my laptop with me. You don't have to stop therapy to break it down either. Take my laptop with me, this pops up. This guy goes on like so. So it's just a little, these wheels pop out. I would take my patient with me. We would leave this behind. And then this is what you would take for your transport. So you can see it's a much smaller footprint, a little easier to get on a helicopter or get in an ambulance. This laptop comes off, so if you've got the patient to one side, you can always, and you're going on a transport, you just have this, rest this on your lap if you wanted to do that as well. Couple things to keep in mind. So now it's telling us, I don't know if you guys see, but before we had a quarter of a tank when we were on here, now it's telling me that we have a full tank, right? But that's not, we're disconnected from the tank, right? So that is that reservoir that's in here. And when you're in the rescue mode, you have 36 of those autofills. So a couple days worth of helium on it for a normal, just a trip across town should be no big deal. And then again, the other thing you gotta keep in mind is we're disconnected from that AC power cord, so you're totally on battery power. So you wanna make sure you got 2 good batteries. And this is a situation where if you were going on a long transport, you might wanna grab an extra battery, steal one from another unit, and take it with you. Again, it's gonna use all of the battery power in bay number 1. It's telling me it's using bay number 1, and then it will switch over to the next battery. So 36 autofills is basically 36 of those 2-hour intervals where it flushes the line and refills it. If you have a disconnection of this helium line, you lose 6 of those 36 autofills. So I always remind people, we've had some flight teams that have had trouble loading the patient and then loading this unit in at the same time, so they disconnect it when they get the patient in. And you can imagine if you did that 2 or 3 times, 6, 12, 18, you've lost half of your helium before you even kind of start your transport. So just be mindful of that if you can. Disconnections are gonna be kind of the tricky part of that. If you disconnect, you lose 6 of those 36. If you had your main unit next to you, every time you take this unit and dock it back in there, it refills this helium. That's how it refills it. So you could always just, if you had a couple of quick disconnects, you could pop it back into that main unit. It would refill it and then disconnect it again, if that makes sense. So.
Or you could even roll the main unit out too.
Yeah, a lot of times.
And then take it out of the main unit.
Yeah.
Once you're
I service a team in Maui, and they have these, and they fly a lot of their patients to Oahu. So they've got to take the patient down to the airport, and a lot of times they'll try to keep it on this, and because it takes an hour to get down to the airport, get everything loaded. They'll keep it in this configuration, and then when they have to get on the airplane, they'll break it down and wash them.
How long does it take for the menu to refill the transport unit?
It does it like that. So it's instantaneous. I will tell you that the batteries do take a while though. So if you've got a couple batteries that are pretty depleted, it does take a few hours to recharge those. So that's a bigger issue. If you've got low batteries, it's going to take a little while to charge those up.
We had a transport one time where we went from here via helicopter to the destination was Sunnyside, but they couldn't land at Sunnyside, so we had to land at Aurora and get on a ground ambulance and go from Aurora during rush hour to Sunnyside. And so I'm glad I had an extra battery.
So sometimes you probably didn't even know that going into it. You weren't expecting it. So if you can, probably a good idea to just grab an extra battery with you. Any questions on all that? We kind of buzzed through that pretty quickly. We have had some field so this is nice. It's added sort of, we were talking about this earlier, some extra layers of complexity to the whole system, right? So when you get back from a transport, we just got to make sure that this thing gets properly put back together. What's happened is people have gone and done transports. You drop the patient off. This is in the closet. You're tired. They go back to put this thing together, and put my patient back over here. And what has happened is somebody's comes and kind of does one of these guys. Good. Kind of does one of those. Looks like it's all put back together. This thing's in a closet, and you go to start it up, and you start getting low battery alarms, and you're not sure why. It's because they didn't dock, even though it looks like it's all been put back together, they didn't get this transport unit all the way back in. We're still in the rescue mode, and when you're in the rescue mode, you're on battery power. So even though we're plugged in, we're not charging those batteries. So you always want to make sure that, and yours is kind of sticky here, it looks like. So you hear that audible alarm when you're connected. You want to make sure that you're in the hybrid and that you always see this AC adapters charging your batteries. So those are kind of the...
What was the boogie you said happens when you get back from transport?
Yeah, it's that sometimes they don't get this. Somebody will do a transport, they're tired, they come back, and they just, it looks like this thing, this one's really sticky too, is all the way in there, but it's not. So like, let's say you get one of these. So it looks like you're all back together, but you're still in the, technically in the rescue mode because they didn't get that all the way in. So when you're in the rescue mode, you're not, even though we're plugged in, we're not charging those batteries.